Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Hope the weekend was good. We had a tremendous Sunday. We went to the Saharan Jazz Festival at Kasarani, and that was a lot of fun. Let me start with some macro thoughts. US 30-year yield looking to break free. This is a tweet from David Inglis, and we've seen a sharp back up in longer-term interest rates in the US and in shorter-term interest rates, and I think it's a process of normalization, but there's still further to go. And this is something I was speaking about in September 2016. I like this tweet from Miraj KA, when you're in it for the technology. It's quite funny. And this is the US trade balance with China via Holga, and talk of higher steel and aluminium tariffs coming out of the White House. Home thoughts. Suppose we suddenly wake up and see that what we thought to be this and that ain't this and that at all. Leaving a mark, a color-enhanced hand stencil from La Pasiega in northern Spain, now dated back to 66,700 years. This was in the journal Science of a new dating for art in some of Spain's painted caves. Includes the astounding discovery that a penciled stenciled hand in Maltreviso cave is at least 66,700 years old. The date reached by testing the calcite deposits that have encrusted it over the millennia. That is long before modern humans are known to have reached Europe on their migration out of Africa. It is also more than 25,000 years before the first paintings made by Homo sapiens in Europe were created at Chauvet in France. The Maltreviso hand is not human, at least not Homo sapiens. It has to be that of a Neanderthal, the early species that hunted the big beasts of Ice Age Europe before our lot came along, only to mysteriously vanish about 40,000 years ago, soon after our arrival. I like this. I've recently begun following Ian Cassell. You are either controlled by your memories, which is your past, or your dreams, which is your future. Whichever one you think about most often controls your direction. If you have the time, jump to 27 minutes and 39 seconds on this video. Her scent is intoxicating. Pulls him on an invisible leash. It's an extraordinarily good documentary about lions, but just jump to that to get a flavour. A lone tree silhouetted against a fiery sky, that was in the Masai Mara and was taken by my daughter Aisha. On that same visit I took this footage of the wildebeest, and I tweeted, "We've got you surrounded," said the wildebeest. Best photo 2018, Nairobi skyscrapers, photo by Paras Chandaria. This photograph I took in July 2016. It was a giraffe that had lost half its tail to a hungry hyena, again at the Fairmont Mara. And the final one from that visit, nothing in front of us but the road to the Mara crossing through Maasai country. Mara Fairmont, which is a fabulous place to stay. And finally, we were privileged to see 1 ton, a real tusker, the largest in this part of Kenya, viewed from Oldonyo Lodge in the Chulu Hills, which we visited as well, and it's a tremendously different ecosystem to the rest of Sava. Political reflections. This was a tweet from Steve_Tomlin. Listening to John Gray on Radio 4 describe our situation today perfectly summed up as filtering out complexity. The CPC Central Committee proposed to remove the expression that the President and Vice President shall serve no more than 2 consecutive terms from the country's constitution. That's a significant development. I take you back to something I wrote in August 2017 about China rising. I was talking about China's parabolic rise as being simply breathtaking. Millions of Chinese have been lifted out of poverty, and China continues to expand at a pace that other big economies can only dream about. Xi Jinping's One Belt, One Road program binds the world to Beijing because all the roads and railways have but one destination. That is China. Washington has metasized into an epicenter of risk, Donald Trump refers, and talk of a unipolar US-dominated world have largely evaporated. President Putin refused to be rolled over by a Victoria Nuland-inspired color revolution in the Ukraine and drew a line in the sand. And one of the collateral consequences of that was to send President Putin into the ready embrace of Xi Jinping. In fact, far from being a unipolar world, we have entered a bipolar or even tripolar world. Apart from a few half-hearted and timid FONOP's freedom of navigation operations, China has established control over the South China Sea. It has created artificial islands and then militarized those artificial islands across that same sea. It is a mind-boggling geopolitical advance, any which way you care to cut it. Howard French, who I interviewed a while ago, says, thinking of China today, I am sure glad we seem to have the term limits thing sorted out in America. Few. Students have, said Ike Saul, forced a CNN town hall, got new commitments from Rubio, pressured POTUS to call for bump stock ban, led advertisers to leave the NRA, dragged D'Souza, Ingraham and O'Reilly online, saw Florida aid fired for lies, and raised millions for a march. It's been 9 days. I concluded by using the word youthquake. Youthquake is defined as a significant cultural, political or social change arising from the actions or influence of young people. And it was selected by the Oxford Dictionaries as the 2017 word of the year. The term saw a 401% increase in usage year on year as 2017 saw the often maligned millennial generation drive political change. The publishers cited the UK and New Zealand general elections as examples of young voters mobilizing to support opposition parties. And I wrote about this when I said the youth vote slept in during Brexit, then woke up for the UK snap election and nearly carried Jeremy Corbyn into 10 Downing Street. And I was saying the newly enfranchised vote, youth vote, and I was talking about Kenya, you can talk about many other places, it's a big absolute number of first-time voters and a very big curveball. Is this youth vote turned on? Will it turn out? And how will it vote? I think that applies in several instances we're seeing across the world. Why planes could still vanish into thin air like MH370. Take a read, it's an interesting article in Bloomberg. The signal announcing this new arrhythmic normal was the disappearance of MH370, in my opinion. Israeli satellites reveal Russia's fleet of Sukhoi Su-57 stealth bombers. This is in a satellite photograph. State media also said Pyongyang would regard any maritime blockade by the United States as an act of war. The US and Japanese reactionaries must not act recklessly, keeping in mind if they dare to provoke the DPRK with a wrong view of the changed world, they will only put their security and existence in jeopardy. It added, the statement was issued as the US and Japan are going to extreme lengths to bring the raging wind of war to the Korean peninsula. Ivanka Trump and Kim Yong Chol, leader of the North Korean delegation at the closing ceremony of the Winter Olympics on Sunday. And I thought to myself, this is Donald Trump unleashing what he believes is his secret weapon. 12th of February, I wrote, Kim Jong-un unleashed his secret weapon on the world, that secret weapon being his sister, Kim Yo-jong, who evidently bamboozled South Korea's President Moon River. 18th of September 2017, I wrote of a screaming comes across the sky, I was referencing North Korea. Interesting article in Bloomberg Business Week, Inside North Korea's Hacker Army. John wasn't involved in those attacks, but for half a decade before defecting, he was a foot soldier in North Korea's Hacker Army. Interesting article, worth a read. Let's move on to the currency markets. The euro dollar 123.12, dollar index 89.748, Japanese yen 106.62, Swiss franc 0.9364, the pound 140 exactly, Australian dollar 0.7860, India rupee 64.90, South Korean won 10.76, the Brazilian real 323.65, Egyptian pound 17.6655, and the rand, firmest in more than 3 years, 12.5391. Dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart. I think, in fact, you buy it now with an 88 or 87.50 stop. Euro dollar, last trading at 123.11. I don't think it's got sufficient impetus at this moment in time to hurdle 125.60, where it's been rejected threefold. Federal Reserve assets unwinding. This is an interesting chart from T Commodity talking about how the Fed is removing stimulus from the economy. WTI last week closed trading now at $63.75. Doesn't feel as if it's got the impetus to take out new 2018 highs. Gold, that's rebounded 1336.75 last. Emerging markets, the white paper says that Petro is built on the Ethereum network, while the user guide the government published says it's on the NEM network. I keep reading that the Petro is a cryptocurrency that is backed by oil. What does that mean? First of all, it means that you need to trust Venezuela's government to exchange oil for petros. There are efforts to build decentralized pegged coins, but for the most part, a peg requires someone to maintain it. Obviously, the petro does not give you a security interest in any oil. So the petro is unsecured, oil-indexed debt of a government that is sliding into default and that has been barred from the international debt markets. But it's worse than that. Venezuela doesn't even promise to give you any oil. The oil peg is just this. The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela guarantees that it will accept petros as a form of payment of national taxes, fees, contributions, and public services, taking as a reference the price of the barrel of the Venezuelan basket of the previous day with a percentage discount of DV. Imagine that someone told you, without using words like crypto or blockchain, that Venezuela was planning to issue perpetual, zero-coupon, unsecured debt that could be used to pay taxes in Venezuela at a valuation pegged to the price of oil, but that Venezuelans wouldn't be able to buy that debt. I think it would be fairly clear that there is no use case for that debt. The Venezuelans who could use the debt to pay taxes can't buy it with their bolivars. The foreigners who can buy it will get nothing from it. It doesn't pay interest and can't be redeemed for cash. It is simply a joke, a product for nobody. But if you add on the blockchain, then that somehow obscures all of the actual economics of the product. Pretty definitive. Birthday boy today with his family. This is the previous president of Zimbabwe, President Mugabe, who says his wife is crying every night. Tensions high as DR Congo ruling party supporters storm cathedral. Tensions soared in DR Congo on Saturday as hundreds of ruling party supporters stormed Kinshasa Cathedral after authorities banned a planned church-backed rally against President Joseph Kabila. We have come to take possession of Our Lady of the Congo Cathedral to take part in Sunday Mass and defend the homelands, said Papi Pungu, youth wing leader of the People's Party for Reconstruction and Democracy, told AFP, vowing to spend the night there. Authorities banned Sunday's anti-Kabila march after previous protests on New Year's Eve in January 21st saw 15 people killed by security forces, according to tolls given by organizers and the UN. Apparently one individual was killed this time around. In this photograph you see policemen reacting after a protester threw a stone from the Notre Dame Cathedral compound in Kinshasa. And you remember that quote of Paul Virilio's and about how you only become a motor of attack if you're in the street? Well, Kabila is taking the fight to the street and trying to snuff it out at its source. South African all shares minus 1.33% year to date. Dollar versus Rand, I think you continue to buy the Rand. It's at 12.5391. The Nigerian all shares up 11.32% so far this year. And the Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is up 29.34% this year and is the outlier. My article over the weekend was about the Eurobond. The government of Kenya sold $2 billion worth of Eurobonds last week. The $1 billion 10-year Eurobond was priced at 7.25% versus an initial price guidance of 7.625%. And the $1 billion 30-year bond was priced at 8.25% versus 8.625% initial guidance. Investors placed $14 billion worth of orders, which was a solid outcome considering that the roadshow was buffeted by a Moody's downgrade. Moody's downgraded Kenya's debt rating to B2 from B1, and by the news that the IMF had choked off access to a $1.5 billion facility. The funds were approved by the IMF in March 2016, were available for Kenya to access if it faced exogenous shocks. Kenya is the third African issuer this year. Egypt and Nigeria each attracted $12 billion of orders when they sold $6.5 billion of debt between them last week. Egypt's 10-year bond was sold at 6.59% and Nigeria at 6.5%. There is more to come from the continent, with Côte d'Ivoire expected to sell euro-denominated debt. Ghana is apparently looking for $2 billion. South Africa, Senegal and Angola also slated to sell. The flurry of issuance adds to an already record debt tally for Sub-Saharan Africa, which has ballooned to over $200 billion from less than $30 billion in 2007. BIS data shows the government of Kenya might well tap these bonds in short order and sell up to a further $1 billion. At that point, we will have maxed out the Eurobond market. I am of the view that the net proceeds need to be put to work transparently and effectively. The economy needs an adrenaline shot. Private sector credit growth is still close to zero and the credit crunch is real. Razia Khan, who's the chief African economist at Standard Chartered, told the Financial Times' John Aglenby that the need for fiscal consolidation is fully realized at the Finance Ministry. Whether this is taken on board by all actors in Kenya is a different matter, she said. There will have to be a broader buy-in that this is the way to go. Mr. Rotich said he would curb spending, boost revenue to reduce the budget deficit from 8.9% last June to 4% by June 2021, and come up with a package of reforms that will help get us out of the current interest rate cap arrangement so we can extend credit to the private sector. Mr. Rotich has to wield the knife and will have to walk the talk because we're now running out of road. Take a look at Zambia if you want to see what happens when you reach the end of the road. Ian Mickelson, the IMF's Kenya resident representative, said the two reforms were key to extending the facility. The IMF has been a solid cheerleader of Kenya Inc. We are now boxed in and we cannot afford to lose the IMF precautionary facility. The markets have given us the benefit of the doubt, but to assume it will do so again is a suboptimal trade. We don't need the IMF resources at the moment, but we need a precautionary or insurance arrangement, Rotich said, so we definitely like to continue with the same facility. Ronak Gopaldas, in an article captioned "For vulnerable African countries, a reliance on Chinese financing could pose a threat to sovereignty," speaks to debt trap diplomacy, a predatory system designed to ensnare countries into a straitjacket of debt servitude. Brahma Chaleni, in a 2017 article from Project Syndicate, explains the Chinese loans are collateralized by strategically important natural assets with high long-term value, even if they lack short-term commercial viability. This is the point. We have surged our borrowing costs, but the assets in which we invested are evidently lacking in short-term viability. We now need to be seized of the need to make our investments viable and quickly. Late on Friday, Kengen reported its first half earnings. Electricity revenue expanded 1.69% to 14.924 billion. Steam revenue was the outlier at plus 97.95% and 3.154 billion. Other income was down 10.53%. First half total revenue was up 5.829% at 18.613 billion. Operating expenses grew at 5.829%. Steam costs were up sharply, 40.188%. First half EBITDA was up 0.862%. Depreciation and amortization was up 14.705% to 5.195 billion. Important to note that. Finance costs climbed 1.433%. Profit before tax was down 7.3847%. Profit after tax was down 11.459%. Basic EPS was down 11.429%. Diluted EPS was down 16.216%. As they said in their commentary, interest income increased to 732 million. EBITDA increased. Profit before tax declined due to the increased depreciation and amortization cost. They're on course to complete the ongoing construction of a 158 megawatt Olkaria 5 power plant by 2019. Higher energy revenues from geothermal and increased steam revenue following the completion of the Olkaria Suswa transmission line. As I said, steam was the outlier, and my conclusions are that really it was a story of depreciation and amortization crimping earnings, but that the growth curve is very much intact, and I for one think that you should look at steam and geothermal as leading the way. So I think it's a buy. Kenya shilling 101.92, Nairobi All Share up 5.6% year to date, NSE 20 up 0.03% year to date. I attended the Safaricom Jazz at 5 Music That Moves concert and thoroughly enjoyed ourselves. Once again, I'd like to thank Safaricom for that invitation.